I used to think every child grew up afraid of footsteps, not strangers' footsteps, their fathers. The sound of my father returning home at night controlled the atmosphere of our entire house more than electricity ever did. Before we even saw him, we could already feel him entering our lives. The gate would screech open, his shoes would scrape against the dusty ground outside. Then silence would spread through the house so quickly it almost felt supernatural. Conversation stopped, spoons moved carefully, breathing itself became quieter. My younger brother once asked me why everybody changed whenever Daddy came home. I lied to him. People are just tired at night, I said. But even at 12 years old, he looked unconvinced. Children understand fear long before adults admit it exists. My father was not violent every day. Somehow that made things worse. If a person's cruel all the time, at least you know who they are. But my father could laugh with neighbors outside in the afternoon, buy roasted corn for us on good days, even pray loudly in church on Sundays, while people praised him for being responsible. Then one small thing would happen. Salt missing from food, noise during football, school fees discussion, a crying child, a bad business day. And suddenly the entire house would feel unsafe again. My mother always said the same sentence afterward. You know how your father is. As if that explained everything, as if pain became easier to survive once people gave it a familiar name. The older I became, the more I noticed strange things about the women in my family. None of them spoke about happiness the way other people did. Marriage was described like survival, endurance was praised, mourn and peace. Whenever women gathered during family meetings, they laughed loudly, but sadness always hid underneath their laughter like smoke trapped inside walls. One afternoon when I was 14, I overheard my grandmother speaking to my mother behind the kitchen. "A man is like fire," she said while cutting vegetables. "If you try to control him too much, he'd burn his heart out." My mother did not argue. She only nodded quietly while stirring soup. I remember standing outside the window listening to them and feeling something uncomfortable move inside me. Because neither of them sounded angry, they sounded resigned. Like women who stopped expecting life to become gentle. It frightened me more than shouting ever did. By 16, I had already become the mature daughter. Everybody praised, relatives loved saying things like, "This girl is strong. She understands suffering. She will make a good wife someday." Nobody realized those compliments were built from survival skills. I knew how to read moods before entering rooms. I knew how to apologize quickly even when I was innocent. I knew how to hide tears. I knew how to become emotionally invisible whenever tension started rising. Those are not signs of maturity. They are signs of a child learning how to stay safe. Sometimes at night, I used to lie awake listening to my parents argue through the thin walls and make silent promises to myself. When I grow up, my children will never fear me. My home will feel peaceful. Nobody will beg for love inside my house, but life has a cruel way of planting fear inside people who are trying hardest not to become what hurt them. At 19, I started working part-time at a supermarket while attending school. The money was small, but at least it helped with food sometimes. My mother looked older. Every month, stress had started changing her face quietly. Some mornings, I caught her staring into space before remembering herself again. One evening, she sent me to buy kerosene after work. When I returned home, I found my father shouting because dinner was late. My brother had accidentally broken one of his drinking glasses earlier that day. And the tension in the house already felt dangerous before I even entered. I remember my mother's hands shaking while serving food. Then my father suddenly stood up. The chair dragged violently across the floor. Everybody froze. My little brother dropped his spoon immediately and lowered his head. I hated that reaction because it was too practiced. No child should know exactly what position to take before violence begins. "You are raising useless children," my father shouted. My mother tried calming him down quietly, but he pushed the plate away so hard that soup spilled across the floor. And then something happened. I still think about years later. My brother flinched before anybody touched him. That destroyed something inside me.
because fear had already become natural to him too. That night, after my father finally slept, my mother cleaned the floor silently while the rest of us pretended nothing happened. I followed her into the kitchen. "Mommy," I asked carefully, "were you scared of Grandpa too?" For a few seconds, she said nothing. Only the sound of running water filled the room. Then quietly, without looking at me, she answered, "My father was worse. Not angry, not emotional, just tired. As if pain was something women in our family inherited, like old wrappers passed from mother to daughter." I want you to ask more questions. Did he hit you? Did Grandma protect you? Why did you marry someone similar? Why didn't you leave? But her face stopped me. It was the face of someone surviving life one day at a time. Weeks later, something happened that terrified me more than my father ever had. I came home exhausted after a terrible day at work. A customer accused me of stealing change. My manager embarrassed me in front of everybody before later discovering the mistake came from another cashier. Nobody apologized to me. The humiliation sat inside my chest the entire journey home. The moment I entered the compound, my younger brother ran toward me excitedly and accidentally stepped on my shoe, causing the food container in my hand to fall into dirty water. And suddenly, I snapped. I shouted at him so loudly that even I became shocked by my own voice. He froze instantly. Then slowly, my little brother raised his hands near his face like somebody preparing to be hit. The entire world inside me went silent, because that movement was familiar, too familiar. I had done the exact same thing in front of my father many times. My brother's eyes were trembling, not confusion, fear of me. In that moment, it felt like generations of pain were standing directly in front of me, staring into my face. And for the first time in my life, I became terrified that maybe the curse inside our family was no longer just my father. Maybe it was something living inside all of us now. That night, I could not sleep. Around midnight, I walked outside and sat alone near the water tank behind our building while the neighborhood generator hummed in the distance. Then I heard voices near the fence. My mother and my aunt were talking softly, thinking everybody else was asleep. And what I heard next changed my entire understanding of my family forever. Because my aunt asked her one quiet question. "Do you ever regret staying with him?" There was a long silence. Then my mother answered in a broken voice I had never heard before. "I stayed because I was afraid I would become him if I left." And suddenly, for the first time in my life, I realized my mother was not only afraid of my father, she was afraid of herself too.
I thought leaving home would heal me. That was the lie I carried for years. At 21, I finally moved into a small one-room apartment near campus. The room was tiny. The ceiling leaked when rain became too heavy. The bathroom door refused to close properly. Sometimes rats scratched inside the walls at night, but none of that mattered to me. For the first time in my life, I could breathe without listening for my father's footsteps. The silence inside that room felt strange at first. No shouting, no plates breaking, no tension hiding inside ordinary conversations, just silence. And honestly, peace frightened me more than chaos did. Because when somebody grows up inside survival mode, calmness can feel suspicious. My body had spent too many years preparing for danger. Even after leaving home, part of me still waited for something bad to happen. I noticed it slowly. The first time my landlord knocked unexpectedly, my heart started racing immediately. Whenever people raised their voices nearby, my chest tightened. If someone sounded disappointed in me, I apologized too quickly. If someone became kind to me, I became uncomfortable. I did not understand how damaged I truly was until I started getting close to people. That was when the real problems began. I met Daniel during my second year at school. He was calm in a way that confused me, patient, soft-spoken. The type of man who listened carefully before speaking. At first, I did not trust him. Men in my life usually carried anger loudly. Daniel carried gentleness instead. It almost felt unnatural. The first time he bought food for me after class, I became suspicious immediately. "What do you want from me?" I asked. He laughed softly, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. People in my family never gave freely. Kindness usually arrived carrying conditions behind it. Favors became future weapons during arguments. Love was something people used to control each other. So when Daniel showed care without demanding anything, my mind could not relax around it. Sometimes he would ask single questions like, "Did you eat? Did you get home safely? How was your day?" And somehow those questions made me emotional because nobody had asked me those things consistently before. And not without tension attached to it. One evening, we sat outside a small roadside restaurant after heavy rainwater still dripped slowly from the roof while buses splashed muddy water across the road, and nearby Daniel kept talking about a movie he wanted us to watch together. But honestly, I was not listening anymore. I was watching him laugh, watching how relaxed he looked. And suddenly a painful thought entered my mind. People like this do not survive in my family. Soft people get broken there. The thought frightened me badly. The closer Daniel became, the more uncomfortable I grew. I started picking fights over small things. Sometimes I ignored his calls for hours. Sometimes I became cold for no reason at all. And the worst part of me wanted him to react badly. I kept waiting for the anger, the shouting, the cruelty, because pain was familiar to me. Healthy love was not. One night, Daniel finally asked me a question I could not answer. "Why do you always look afraid when somebody cares about you?" I laughed immediately to avoid the conversation, but deep down, I knew he was right. I was afraid of depending on people, afraid of becoming vulnerable, afraid of turning into my mother, afraid of becoming my father. Sometimes after arguments, I heard my father's voice inside my own thoughts. Control the situation. Do not let people disrespect you. Weakness invites pain. Those thoughts terrified me because they did not sound fully like me anymore. It felt like generations speaking through my mouth. Around that time, my mother started calling me more often. At first, our conversation stayed shallow, food, school, money, neighbors. But one night, while speaking on the phone, she suddenly became quiet. Then she asked softly, "Are you happy where you are?" The question caught me off guard because happiness was never something women in my family discussed openly. I did not know how to answer. After a long silence, my mother spoke again. "You know, I was very different before I married your father." Something about her voice that night felt fragile. For the first time, she did not sound like my mother. She sounded like somebody mourning herself. That conversation changed everything between us. Slowly, she began telling me things she had hidden for years. How my grandfather used belts and sticks inside their home. How my grandmother normalized suffering. How she married young because she believed escape was the same thing as healing. How she ignored warning signs because pain already felt familiar to her. Then one night, she said something that stayed inside me for years afterward. When chaos is all you know, peace can feel lonely. I sat silently on my bed after that call ended because suddenly, my entire life started making terrible sense. Why I distrusted kindness. Why calm people made me nervous. Why love exhausted me. Why part of me kept preparing for betrayal even during beautiful moments. Trauma had trained my body long before my mind understood what was happening. A few weeks later, Daniel invited me to dinner with his older sister and her family. The entire evening felt unreal to me. They laughed without fear. People disagreed without insulting each other. Nobody slammed plates onto tables.
Nobody looked terrified when somebody made mistakes. At one point, Daniel's little nephew accidentally spilled juice across the dining table, and instantly, my body tensed. I waited for shouting, for insults, for humiliation. Instead, his sister simply sighed, cleaned the table gently, and said, "Next time, be more careful." That was all. The little boy did not tremble, did not panic, did not apologize repeatedly. He simply continued eating. And suddenly, I felt something painful rising inside my chest because I realized that child was living the kind of childhood I once believed only existed in movies. That night, I cried quietly inside Daniel's bathroom before we left. Not because anything bad happened, because nothing bad happened, and somehow that hurt even more. But the moment that truly frightened me came weeks later. Daniel and I argued one evening over something small. I honestly cannot even remember what started it. Stress from schoolwork, pressure, exhaustion, everything inside me already felt heavy. Then during the argument, Daniel raised his voice slightly in frustration. Not shouting, just louder than normal. And suddenly, my entire body reacted before my mind could think. My chest tightened, my breathing changed. Anger exploded inside me so fast it scared me. Before I could stop myself, I raised my hand. Not fully, not enough to hit him, but enough. Enough for Daniel to freeze, enough for silence to enter the room, enough for me to finally see myself clearly. The look on his face destroyed me instantly. Not anger, shock, pain. Like somebody watching the person they love become someone else right in front of them. Slowly, Daniel stepped backward. Then quietly, he asked me one question. Who taught you that love and fear belong together? And honestly, I think part of me broke open forever after that moment.
For a long time, I believed love would heal me automatically. I thought marriage would erase fear. I thought motherhood would soften my wounds. I thought creating a different home would somehow silence the past. I was wrong. Daniel and I got married quietly, nothing extravagant, just close family, tired smiles, cheap decorations, and too much heat inside the small church hall. But I remember one thing clearly that day. Peace. Real peace. Not the fragile silence I grew up with. Not the kind where everybody walks carefully around anger. This felt different, safe. When Daniel held my hand during the ceremony, I remember thinking, maybe this is how life changes. Maybe this is how curses finally end in honest faith. The beginning was beautiful, small apartments, second-hand furniture, tight finances, late-night laughter over burnt noodles, holding each other during power outages, falling asleep while rain hit the windows. For the first time in my life, home did not feel dangerous. And I became pregnant, and slowly, fear returned. Not outside me, inside me. The closer I got to becoming a mother, the more terrified I became some nights. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling while Daniel slept beside me peacefully. I kept asking myself the same question repeatedly. What if pain is inherited deeper than memory? I remembered my mother's tired eyes, my grandmother's silence, my father's anger, my own outbursts, and suddenly motherhood stopped feeling beautiful. It started feeling dangerous. After my daughter was born, everybody congratulated me, but nobody warned me how loudly childhood trauma returns when somebody places a child in your arms, because suddenly you start remembering the child you once were too. The first few months exhausted me completely. Sleepless nights, crying, financial stress, fear, anxiety. My body felt unfamiliar. My emotions became unstable. Some days I loved my daughter so deeply it physically hurt. Other days, I became overwhelmed by things that should have been small. Crying irritated me faster than it should. Noise exhausted me. Stress sat permanently inside my chest. And the worst part,
I started hearing echoes of my parents inside myself. One evening, my daughter would not stop crying no matter what I did. I had barely slept in days. Daniel was still at work. The room felt unbearably hot. My head was pounding. Then suddenly, anger rose inside me so fast it frightened me. For one terrible second, I understood exactly how exhausted adults become dangerous. I placed my daughter down quickly and walked into the bathroom shaking. Then I locked the door and cried silently on the floor because I finally understood something horrifying. Abusive people are not always monsters. Sometimes they're wounded people who never learned how to regulate pain before becoming responsible for someone else's heart. That realization stayed with me for weeks. I became obsessed with controlling myself afterward, too obsessed. I monitored my tone constantly, watched every reaction, overanalyzed every emotion. I wanted to become the perfect mother so badly that I started emotionally suffocating myself. Whenever my daughter fell down, panic overwhelmed me immediately. Whenever she cried, guilt consumed me. Whenever Daniel corrected me gently, shame exploded inside my chest like an attack. I was no longer parenting from love alone. I was parenting from fear, and fear changes people quietly. Daniel noticed it before I did. "You don't relax anymore," he told me one night softly. "I'm fine," I replied immediately, but I wasn't. I had started controlling everything inside the house, the way bottles were arranged, the way doors closed, the way conversations happened around the baby. Small disruptions irritated me too quickly. I kept telling myself I was protecting peace, but honestly, I was trying to control chaos before it could hurt me first. Then one evening, everything cracked open. It started small. Daniel forgot to pick up diapers after work. Normally, something like that should have remained a simple mistake, but stress had already been building inside me for weeks. The moment he entered the house empty-handed, frustration exploded inside my chest. "You forgot again," I snapped. Daniel looked exhausted himself. I said, "I'm sorry, the pharmacy was already closed." But I could not calm down anymore. Every buried emotion inside me suddenly rose to the surface at once. The exhaustion, the fear, the pressure, the resentment, the terror of becoming my parents. My voice became louder, sharper, harder. Then suddenly, my daughter started crying. Daniel reached for her immediately. And in that moment, something happened that froze my entire body. My daughter flinched when I raised my voice, not dramatically, just slightly. But enough for the ring to become silent. Enough for my stomach to drop instantly, because suddenly, I was no longer seeing my daughter, I was seeing myself. I was seeing my younger brother raising his hands near his face years ago. I was seeing every frightened child inside my family, and now my daughter had joined them. I sat down immediately because my legs suddenly felt weak. Daniel held our daughter quietly while watching me carefully. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then finally, in a soft, exhausted voice, he asked, "Adez, what are you fighting so hard against?" I could not answer because honestly, I no longer knew that night. After putting the baby to sleep, I sat alone inside the kitchen staring at nothing while the refrigerator hummed softly nearby. Then Daniel entered quietly and sat across from me. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said something that broke me completely. "You spend so much energy trying not to become your parents." He paused carefully. "But sometimes it feels like fear is still raising this family." I started crying immediately. Not loud crying, the quiet kind that comes from exhaustion, too deep for noise. Daniel moved closer slowly. "I know you love us," he whispered. "That's never been the problem." Then he asked me one question I could not escape afterward. "Do you actually want to heal? Or do you only want to avoid becoming them?" And honestly, That question terrified me more than anything I had faced in my entire life.
For weeks after Daniel asked me that question, I avoided looking too deeply at myself. It was easier to stay busy, wash bottles, clean the house, feed the baby, cook dinner, pretend everything was improving, but his words kept following me quietly. Do you actually want to heal, or do you only want to avoid becoming them? At first, I became defensive inside my mind. Of course, I wanted healing. Hadn't I already suffered enough? Hadn't I spent years trying to become different from my parents? Hadn't I worked hard to build a peaceful home, but slowly? I started realizing something uncomfortable. Avoiding abuse is not the same thing as healing. Because even though I was not hitting my child, fear was still living inside me. Anger was still controlling me. Anxiety was still shaping my home, and children can feel emotional tension even when nobody speaks. One afternoon, I was folding clothes while my daughter played quietly on the floor beside me. Suddenly, she dropped one of her toys accidentally. The sound startled her immediately. She looked toward me nervously, waiting, watching my face carefully before reacting. My chest tightened instantly, because I knew that behavior. I had lived that behavior. That was not normal childhood caution. That was survival. That night, after everybody slept, I stood inside the bathroom staring at my reflection for a long time. I looked exhausted, not physically, emotionally, like someone carrying generations inside her nervous system. And for the first time in my life, I admitted something honestly to myself. Love alone was not healing me. I needed help. The first counseling session felt almost humiliating. I sat across from a middle-aged woman named Dr. Miriam inside a small, quiet office with soft yellow lighting and shelves filled with books about trauma, grief, relationships, and emotional recovery. At first, I struggled to speak properly because in my family, people survived pain. They did not analyze it. Dr. Miriam asked me simple questions that somehow felt impossible to answer. What frightened you most as a child? When did you first learn to hide your emotions? What did love feel like growing up? That last question almost made me laugh. Love? Honestly, I did not know. Protection, maybe. Fear sometimes, sacrifice often, control occasionally, but safety? I was not sure. Week after week, counseling slowly called memories out of places I had buried years ago. Memories of my father shouting, my mother crying quietly at night, my grandmother teaching endurance like it was holiness, the constant fear of making mistakes, the exhaustion of monitoring adults' emotions as a child. In one session, Dr. Miriam said something that shook me deeply. Children raised around unpredictable anger often become adults who mistake anxiety for love. I sat silently after hearing that, because suddenly, so many parts of my life finally made sense. Why peace made me uncomfortable, why calm relationships felt suspicious, why my body stayed tense even during happy moments, why part of me always prepared for disaster before it arrived. I had not learned emotional safety as a child. I had learned survival, and survival changes the body. Healing was not beautiful the way motivational speakers describe it. It was embarrassing sometimes, painful often. There were days counseling made me angry. Days I cried inside parking lots afterward. Days old memories ruined my sleep completely. But slowly, I began noticing small changes too. I apologized differently. I listened more carefully during conflict. I stopped treating every disagreement like danger. I started breathing before reacting emotionally. The changes were small, but they mattered. One evening, my daughter spilled food across the living room carpet accidentally. The old version of me would have exploded immediately from stress and exhaustion. Instead, I closed my eyes, took one slow breath, then another. My daughter stood frozen nearby, waiting for my reaction. Fear already preparing itself inside her small body. Slowly, I knelt beside her. It's okay, I said softly, yet something about the look on her face almost broke me. Relief, pure relief. As if her little body had prepared for pain that never arrived.
That moment stayed inside me for days afterward, because I realized something heartbreaking. Children notice gentleness just as deeply as they notice fear. Around that time, my relationship with my mother also started changing. For years, I blamed her quietly for staying with my father. Part of me believed she failed us, but counseling forced me to see her differently. Not only as my mother, as a wounded woman too. One afternoon, I visited her alone while my father traveled to work. We sat outside peeling vegetables together while neighborhood children played football nearby. For a long time, neither of us spoke about anything important. Then suddenly, my mother asked quietly, "Are you angry with me?" The question caught me off guard. I looked at her carefully. She looked smaller than I remembered lately, tired, older, fragile in ways motherhood once hid from me. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I saw fear inside her too. Not fear of my father, fear of judgment, fear that maybe she had failed her children. I wanted to say yes immediately. Yes. I was angry. Angry she stayed. Angry she normalized suffering. Angry she protected survival more than peace. But when I looked at her face, another feeling rose inside me too. Sadness. Because suddenly I could see it clearly. My mother was somebody's frightened child once too. Quietly, she began speaking. I thought surviving was enough. She admitted softly. Tears filled her eyes slowly. My mother taught me that enduring pain made women strong. Her voice started trembling. But nobody taught us how to heal. And then, for the first time in my entire life, I saw my mother cry openly, not hidden tears, not silent suffering, real grief, years of exhaustion leaving her body all at once. I moved beside her immediately and held her while she cried against my shoulder. And honestly, that moment healed something inside me too. Not completely, but enough for me to finally understand this truth. People can wound others deeply, while still being wounded themselves. Weeks later, life became quiet again for a while. Counseling continued. My marriage slowly softened. I laughed more naturally with my daughter. Daniel looked less worried watching me. Then one rainy evening, my younger brother called unexpectedly. The moment I answered, I knew something was wrong. His voice sounded shaken. "Adaz." He paused, then quietly said, "Daddy collapsed."
The hospital smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion. I hated it immediately. The bright white lights, the slow footsteps in the hallway, the quiet crying from distant rooms, the uncomfortable silence families carry when they are forced to sit beside pain they never resolved. My father looked smaller than I remembered. That shocked me the most. All my childhood, he had felt larger than life. His anger filled entire rooms. His voice controlled the atmosphere of our home. Even silence bent itself around his moods, but lying on that hospital bed, he looked fragile, human, old. For several seconds, I simply stood near the doorway, staring at him while machines beeped softly nearby, and honestly, part of me hated myself for feeling sorry for him, because memory is complicated. A person can hurt you deeply and still remain human enough to pity. My mother sat quietly near the window, reading prayers under her breath. My younger brother looked emotionally exhausted. Stress had already hollowed his face slightly. When he stepped outside with me later that evening, we sat near the hospital entrance while rainwater gathered beside the parking lot. For a while, neither of us spoke. And suddenly he laughed softly. Not because anything was funny. The kind of laugh people use when emotions become too heavy for silence. "You know what's strange?" he said quietly. I looked at him. I still get nervous hearing footsteps behind me at night. My chest tightened immediately because I understood exactly what he meant. He stared toward the wet parking lot while speaking again. "I thought leaving home would remove everything." His voice cracked slightly. "But some things follow you." That conversation broke something open between us. For years, both of us survived separately without fully discussing what childhood did to us and our family. Pain was acknowledged indirectly. Everybody suffered together while pretending suffering was normal. But that night, honesty finally entered the room. My brother admitted he struggled with anger too, with trust, with emotional distance, with fear of becoming like our father. Then quietly, he asked me something painful. "Do you ever feel guilty for loving him sometimes?" I looked down immediately, because yes, that was one of the hardest truths to admit. My father was not only violence, not only fear. Sometimes he bought us food when he had little money. Sometimes he prayed for us. Sometimes he laughed loudly at movies. Sometimes he carried my brother on his shoulders when we were children. That complexity confused us for years. Because children struggle when the person hurting them is also the person feeding them. And honestly, that confusion can follow people into adulthood. A few days later, I visited the hospital alone. My father was awake this time. The room felt unbearably quiet. For a while, neither of us spoke properly. And suddenly he asked, "How is your daughter?" The question caught me off guard. "She's fine," I answered carefully. He nodded slowly. Then silence returned again. I realized something strange in that moment. For years, I imagined confronting my father dramatically. Someday, I imagined anger exploding from me after years of silence. But standing there beside his hospital bed, I did not feel explosive anger anymore. Mostly sadness. Sadness for my childhood, sadness for my mother, sadness for the frightened boy my father probably once was too. Still, understanding pain is not the same thing as excusing it. So finally, after years of silence, I asked him quietly, "Did you know we were afraid of you?" My father looked away immediately. That was the first sign. The second was a silence, long, heavy, ashamed. And finally, in a weak voice, he answered, "My father was worse." The exact same sentence my mother once said, and suddenly, I realized how deeply pain repeats itself inside families where nobody heals it. When a wounded child becomes an angry adult, that angry adult raises frightened children. Those frightened children grow into anxious adults carrying invisible wounds into new homes, generation after generation, like emotional inheritance. My father stared toward the ceiling while speaking softly. I thought fear would make children strong. His voice sounded tired now, but I think it only made all of us lonely. That sentence stayed inside me for a long time afterward, because for the first time in my life, I heard regret inside his voice. Real regret. Not excuses. Not pride, not authority, just regret. I cried quietly after leaving the hospital that day. Not because everything was fixed. Some wounds never disappear completely. But something important had finally happened. The silence ended. Weeks later, my father returned home weaker than before. Life slowed down afterward. Conversations inside the family changed gradually, not perfectly, not magically, but honestly. My mother spoke more openly now. My brother visited more often. Daniel looked lighter around my family, and for the first time in my life, peace inside our home stopped feeling temporary. Then one evening, the moment happened that showed me everything had truly changed.
My daughter accidentally broke one of my favorite cups while playing inside the kitchen. The sound shattered across the floor instantly, and immediately, she froze. Her small body became tense. Her eyes widened with fear, her breathing changed, waiting, preparing herself for anger. For one painful second, I saw every frightened child inside my family standing there with her, my younger brother, my mother, even me. The entire history of fear inside our bloodline felt present in that kitchen. Then slowly, I knelt beside my daughter. "It's okay," I whispered gently. Tears filled her eyes immediately, not from pain, relief. I carefully moved the broken pieces away before pulling her close against my chest. And while holding her, I realized something life-changing. Breaking the family curse is not one dramatic moment. It is 1,000 quiet decisions. Choosing patience when anger feels easier. Choosing honesty when silence feels safer. Choosing healing when denial feels more familiar. Choosing gentleness in moments where fear once ruled at night. After my daughter fell asleep, I sat quietly beside her bed, watching her breath peacefully in the darkness. And for the first time in my entire life, home finally felt safe. Not perfect, but safe. And maybe that is where healing truly begins. It is sometimes the most dangerous family curse is not poverty, not failure, not sickness. Sometimes the real curse is pain traveling silently from one generation to the next. Because nobody stops long enough to heal it. Many people grow up learning survival before they ever learn love. Some children become adults without ever feeling emotionally safe. And sometimes, without realizing that wounded people raise wounded children. But maybe true strength is not pretending pain never affected us. Maybe true strength is finally facing it honestly before passing it forward. Because children do not only inherit our faces or our names. Sometimes they inherit our anger, our fears, our silence, our emotional wounds. But if healing begins, they can inherit that too. So maybe the real question is this: what kind of emotional home are we creating for the people we love? Are we healing from our pain, or simply surviving it? Have we normalized behaviors that secretly wounded us as children? And if healing does not begin with us, and who will begin it?